Did you advocate to President Trump to impose martial law as a way to remain in power?
I don't recall.
Yeah, so you're not denying you did it, you just don't remember.
I don't remember.
Are you aware of any other elected congressional representatives advocating for martial law to stop the peaceful transfer of power before the inauguration of Mr. Biden?
I don't remember.
It's been 6 days since Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Green of Georgia testified she cannot remember if she or her Republican caucus mates were advocating for martial law a few days before President Biden's inauguration. For my part, I remember I didn't do that. But, you know, we've all got different memories. Now, it has been 3 days since we got the leak of thousands and thousands of text messages to Donald Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, that confirmed she was, well, doing exactly that. Quote, in our private chat with only members, several are saying the only way to save our republic is for Trump to call for martial law. Several members are saying, and martial law spelled incorrectly. That text has put the Republican Party in such a bad spot that even Fox News' Laura Ingraham, who will ignore January 6 headlines at any cost, felt she had to bring Green on her show to clear it all up.
So you didn't advocate,
right now
you never advocated martial law, that President Trump should use martial law to stop, you know, the transition of power. You never advocated for that, did you?
I don't recall ever advocating for martial law.
I thought it was kind of an unfair hit on you because you said several members were, and then they used that to say you were, and I just wanted to give you the chance to tell us one way or another whether you thought that President Trump, you know, asking for martial law would be a good idea.
Laura, one host to another, I feel your pain there. You are working hard to make that segment work. But even with those softball questions teed up, like, work with me here, Green never said whether she advocated for martial law and also which other members of Congress she was talking about in the text, which would, of course, be the natural question, like, who was talking about it? She just said, I don't recall, I don't recall. That's not the end of the issue, though. Today, the chair of the January 6th committee, Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi, announced the committee will request testimony from several Republican leaders, including 3 House members who've already declined to participate. Ron Fine is the legal director of Free Speech for the People, the co-lead counsel on the challenge to Marjorie Taylor Greene's candidacy that led to her testimony last week, and he joins me now. Ron, good to have you on it. And maybe you could just set the context for the lawsuit that led to that exchange on the stand about martial law before we get to the relevance of these texts. What is the lawsuit? Why is she on the stand there?
Thanks, Chris. There's a provision of the United States Constitution that says that anyone who took an oath to support the Constitution but then broke that oath and engaged in insurrection is ineligible to serve in public office. And we at Free Speech for People, on behalf of a group of Georgia voters, filed a state candidacy challenge to Marjorie Taylor Greene's candidacy for Congress. And that's what brought us to that hearing where she was compelled to answer questions under oath.
Now, there have been similar suits in different jurisdictions. In North Carolina against Madison Cawthorn, that suit has essentially, I think, been thrown out. Basically, the judge said, judges can't block people under this provision of the Constitution. That's not the case in your suit in Georgia, which is going forward. What is the relevance of this text to your mind, to what standard of proof you have to show for her to be barred from running for office?
Well, first, Chris, I just want to clarify that the case in North Carolina against Madison Cawthorn is actually under appeal, and we've got that fast tracked. So that's moving forward in that appeal. But in terms of the text message, we have actually gone back to the judge, even though the hearing's over, and moved to supplement the record. And we pointed out 2 things. First of all, this just adds to her complete lack of credibility. Throughout that hearing on Friday, she claimed not to remember anything that made her look the slightest bit guilty, although, of course, she had supposedly a perfect memory for what she thought would be helpful to her. But secondly, it also shows that the insurrection didn't entirely end on the early morning hours of January 7th. Rather, it continued at a low simmer, perhaps right up until the moment of the inauguration.
What do you think about the hedge they're using that she says, she said so, and after, she's been read the text, and now she says, well, I'm not going to confirm it, but if you read what I said, I don't know about all that. They're just talking about that. Does it make you curious about who was talking about it?
Absolutely. And we did ask her in that hearing if she was aware of any other congressional representatives that were urging the president to declare martial law. And furthermore, she wasn't just sharing this as an observation, like I happened to notice this happening. She said, I want you to tell him. So she was affirmatively passing on that suggestion to the chief of staff to the president of the United States.
Would a member of Congress, 11 days after a violent insurrection has taken place on Capitol Hill, after people have died, after a noose has been constructed on the Capitol lawn and people have chanted, hang Mike Pence, after all that's happened, members of Congress advocating the implementation of martial law so as to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to your mind, would that clear the bar for the constitutional provision that you're suing under?
Well, even if it didn't on its own, it certainly does in combination with everything else. Marjorie Taylor Green had been advocating since well before then that there could not be a peaceful transfer of power. She'd called for the execution of Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. And the day before January 6th, she gave a signal in essentially a code word to violent extremists that it was going to be 1776 all over again, meaning overthrowing tyrants with violence. So when you combine that with her call for martial law after the insurrection was over, the case is very clear that she engaged in insurrection.
I know in North Carolina, you mentioned where the judge said, issued a ruling saying, look, we can't strike Cawthorn from the ballot, that you're appealing that decision there. So that's on appeal there. What are the next steps in the Georgia case?
We're going to be filing a post-trial brief on Friday midday, and then the judge has some time to issue a decision. He said he's going to issue it in about a week afterwards. Then after that, it goes to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who can either approve it or reject it. And then after that, it can be challenged or appealed to the Georgia state court system.
Oh, that's interesting. It's going to go through Raffensperger.
That's right. That's part of the Georgia legal framework, that it goes through the Secretary of State there.
Well, that'll be very, very interesting to watch, Ron Fine. It's a really interesting lawsuit. I think that provision of the 14th Amendment is a pretty important one, and it's interesting in the year of 2022 to see it getting a workout. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still ahead, President Biden says a decision on student loan forgiveness could come in the next few weeks. What that would look like, and the millionaire senator who thinks it's a bad idea after this.